If you kind of said 15 years for very useful quantum computers, that would probably be on the early side. If you said 30 is probably on the late side, but if you picked 20, I think a whole bunch of us would believe it. But what we're interested in is we want to help the industry get there as fast as possible.
That was NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang with his outlook on the quantum computing timeline. Shares of NVIDIA actually rebounding slightly this morning after sliding more than 6% yesterday. By the way, what he said about quantum computing managed to take out a lot of those quantum computing stocks, some of the smaller ones like IonQ, Quantum Computing, Rigetti. Joining us right now for more on all of this is Joseph Moore. He's Morgan Stanley semiconductor analyst. And Joe, I just want to get your take on this. I've been reading a lot of stuff. I mean, after Jensen Huang made his comments the night before last, we actually saw shares a little higher in the morning. Maybe not by a lot, but it certainly wasn't giving back the pullback that we saw later in the day. There were a lot of the tech stocks and other big high flyers that pulled back, though, after we got stronger than expected jobs numbers, just in terms of what the BLS had in terms of jobs openings, those JOLTS numbers. That had people suspecting that maybe the Fed is going to be more reluctant to cut rates anytime soon, and that caused all of these big high flyers to pull back. So do you think the pullback in NVIDIA shares yesterday was more related to what Jensen Huang did or didn't say, or just more related to the overall idea of watching the Federal Reserve and seeing how the economy is doing?
I mean, I think both of those play a role. I think there were also very high expectations around the keynote at CES. And, CES is a trade show oriented around consumer and automotive. And there were some really important developments that came out of the keynote around those markets. But data center is 85% of the revenue. And I think,
right,
there may have been expectations that people wanted to hear more about that. So I think you have some of those issues. But, overall, this is still a company in a very strong product cycle. And data center wasn't the focus here. It's investor focus, but, it's still very strong. So I think it's a combination of some of the market issues that you talked about, as well as maybe some expectations issues around the trade show. But there was really nothing negative to take away from it.
Yeah, what could he say in terms of the data center that the street would really like to hear? I know that the revenue is expected for the fiscal year that ends this month, to come in at $113 billion, ramping all the way up to north of $200 billion by the fiscal year that ends in January of 2027. What do people want to hear on that front?
Well, expectations are high. I think we're 2 months into the Blackwell cycle, the new products that they just started shipping. So I think to think that we were going to get any color on, GB300 or incremental Blackwell products was probably just not going to happen. This wasn't the forum for that anyway. And I think, so from a product standpoint, I think we know everything that we need to know. From a revenue standpoint, you're facing a little bit of a transition here, that you have Blackwell demand is very good. And you've heard these comments from Jensen in the past on CNBC talking about, the level of Blackwell demand being insane. And he didn't really repeat those comments. But I think the issue that you're dealing with is Blackwell demand is really strong, but it's supply constrained. And Hopper, the sort of legacy product, still is the largest portion of that data center business. And so I think we'll still have a couple quarters here where there's meaningful upside. But I think the real upside is kind of into the back half of the year when you start getting that kind of full-blown Blackwell ramp. So I think, people would like to hear that. And I think they did hear that in some sense. But I think, they're trying to avoid those kind of really strong statements about Blackwell because it's not the main driver of the quarter. I think that's the combination of Blackwell and Hopper. So still quite optimistic about how this plays out. But I certainly see the upside being stronger in the second half of the year.
I mean, I guess the question is, with the stock that has done so well, tripled in value last year, how much of this is priced in, how much isn't? Where are you telling people? What's a price target that makes you feel comfortable? Yeah. What's a price arena?
Yeah, well, at some point, this is less about the sort of phenomenon that this stock has been and a little bit more on valuing a growth company on its growth prospects, right? And the stock trades at about 29 times our estimate for calendar 26. That would be high if there were any kind of deceleration in the business. But I don't think there is, even when we sort of go through these transitional challenges, if you will. Challenges, maybe overstating it. But as you move through these transitional issues, you're still beating and raising. Those numbers are still quite likely to be moving higher. So I still think the stock is reasonably valued with good growth prospects this year and beyond. And again, the data points that support that are the strength in the Blackwell demand. And I think it's going to take a while for supply to catch up to that.
Maybe the other thing to mention regarding Jensen are his comments, Jim, about Blackwell again. The scaling wall, more confidence, which we also got out of Nadella as well, talked about maybe the concerns we had in the back half of last year aren't as warranted as we thought.
I mean, over and over again, both Colette Kress, the CFO, and Jensen Huang were talking about how, look, we're shipping in size. We're shipping in size. The big negative had been they were not shipping in size. Now, people wanted them to guide up, and that was not the nature of the CES conference. Some of the analysts just goaded. My friend Ben Reiches did compare it to Tony Dan's in a moment. He does. But Ben
I saw that. They said they worked out together.
Yeah, they worked out. I thought it was pretty cool. Yeah. But Ben Wright just asked this question, which just says, all right, really? I mean, is it longer term? And all you keep hearing about when it's longer term is trillions, not billions, but trillions. Now, can this stock hold up? It had one of the most vicious reversals, which told me that the 0.30 guys, you know, the guys who are gambling, and they should go. By the way, we saw from Flutter and DraftKings that the house is losing.
Yes.
Just go beat on DraftKings. Stop it with the actual companies, because you don't know anything.
Bespoke with a great stat. Yesterday was the 6th time in a year where NVIDIA hit an all-time high intraday and then closed down 4% plus.
I mean, it's what NVIDIA does, because the people who own NVIDIA, it's like the guy who introduced NVIDIA on CES stage, call it NVIDIA, which I continue to remind people is a hand cream that's from Procter & Gamble. And by the way, it's so cold, you should use it.
That's Nivea.
Well, I know, but they throw in a D.
Oh, they do. Okay.
Well, it's because they don't even know how to pronounce it.
I used to use that when I was very
No, that's
younger.
not the point.
Nivea.
The point is the lack of knowledge of what this company does.
It's the most covered company in the world.
Okay, some of the analysts are good, but some of the analysts are just talking about the quarter. And these are people who are bound by the four walls of idiocy. This is one of the greatest companies in the world. These people want to buy, sell. They don't recognize that NVIDIA is doing things that are just running circles around. And in an AV, remember, you need three. You need a simulation, you need a trainer, and you need the actual.
All true. All true.
And Toyota is going to be, I think, one of the top five customers.
So you seem to believe that the growth path ahead for NVIDIA is equal to what we've seen. I mean,
industrial revolution over and over and over again. Why can't we believe? Do you remember? Did you read that book about John Garfield, where they talked about the telephone? And Alexander Graham Bell tries to get it into the Centennial in Philadelphia, and only because the Brazilian guy is there does he get to represent it. And Alexander Graham Bell says, you know what, this could revolutionize all of how we do things. And the American judges were like, who is this clown?
That's what they said about Alexander Graham Bell.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody is questioning whether Jensen
take
Huang
on valuation at the time.
Well, I mean, so selling it 100 times, rule of 40.
As I recall, that stock got way ahead of itself for a period of time. And then it had a typical head and shoulders, and it was a short.
David understands. Now, Alexander Graham Bell, by the way, where was Edison from? Ba-dum-bum. I find over and over again that when you have the industrial revolutions, no one really believes in them. And here's Jensen Huang. When people the other day, someone said to me, "I see you like Jensen Huang because you guys both were dishwashers." And I said, "I was busboy." I mean, the kinds of things I see with people at NVIDIA. How's your dog doing? My dog died 3 years ago. Should I sell the stock? Heaven forbid they listen to Colette Kress, who is not going to give you the numbers that you want.
You're buying NVIDIA.
NVIDIA's been our biggest position coming into this year. And look, even after yesterday's big drop in that name, which none of us like to see, it's still up over 4% to start the year. There's not a better company from a fundamental perspective to own. And because it's a large cap with large profits, I believe NVIDIA will give you the signal as to when to get out of the market. It will be one of the last ones, in our opinion, to break. And when it does break, that will be the clear-cut sign that we need to rotate out of growth and play some serious defense.
What would you call a break in NVIDIA's stock? Down to like 120 or something?
So this may sound as a shock here, but I think we'll see 160 before we see 120, Stuart. But when the market does break, if rates do go to where we think, you'll see names like this, in my opinion, drop by 40 to 50%. And that shouldn't come as a surprise. That happens in every type of short-term bear market that I think we're going to have to navigate through. So we are not buying and holding this year. You have to be nimble, and you have to concentrate in the areas of strength. There are already many areas you need to stay out of, in our opinion, that are broken down. This has been best of breed, and if you've been here, you've had a good start to this year, even with yesterday's sell-off.
Meantime, NVIDIA shares are rebounding a bit after posting their worst day since early September. The semis overall are off to a pretty good start for the new year, up about 4%. Wedbush analyst Matt Bryson joins us this morning with a buy rating on NVIDIA, 175 target. Matt, it's good to see you. I think it's interesting that so much attention on CES, and the halo effect has almost been as powerful as the NVIDIA effect on itself. Commentary about Toyota, commentary about Samsung, all coming out of Jensen this week.
Yeah, certainly. So, I mean, partly it's what we've seen in semiconductors over the last year, 2 years, right? NVIDIA and AI have been moving the entirety of the market, and they've been pulling names that either are also involved in AI, like Marvell and Broadcom, or names that supply NVIDIA, like Samsung, alongside them. So it's been what we've been seeing, or it's a continuation of what we've been seeing, I think.
We talk a lot about market concentration. The same dynamic exists within semis itself. You got the sector at an all-time high, but only 1 in 5, I think, above the 200-day. Do you expect there'll be a broadening within semis too?
Yeah, I think the problem is that you have a very robust spending environment for data center AI, and then at the same time, we have a not so robust spending environment for almost everything else. So whether it's consumer electronics, industrial applications, enterprise spend, they're all kind of lagging. And I think what's not helping that portion of the market is there's a whole lot of uncertainty around what we get with the new administration. So do you see tariffs that force shift in manufacturing? And because of that uncertainty, it's hard for companies to plan. And so I don't see things changing right now. I think AI continues to do well, and everyone else kind of tries to figure out what's going on with the world economy moving forward.
Do you expect the tariff picture to clarify in, let's say, the first half?
I mean, I don't know.
Who knows, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem, and that's the problem with all these companies. They want certainty around planning, right? You don't want to build a new facility in Mexico and find out that all of a sudden your investment isn't worthwhile because you've got this tariff penalty that's been applied.
Is NVIDIA the top of your universe at the moment in terms of favorites?
NVIDIA is up there. I personally like Taiwan Semiconductor a little bit more than NVIDIA, but these are all gradations.
NVIDIA is trying to get a bounce back after the rout that it had yesterday. That was the worst day in months for the stocks in September. CES now in the rear view. How am I thinking about trades like that today?
Yeah, no. So I mean, obviously for NVIDIA, I think the big thing for me, as forget about CES for a second. The last 6 months has been relatively flat for NVIDIA, right? There hasn't really been a seismic move there. There was a lack of, not necessarily innovation talk, but what is the here and now? What's going to happen in the near term? And I think that was, somewhat of a letdown, and that's why the stock kind of traded lower. But when I think about semis broadly, I start to think about, and I continue to love the NVIDIA story, but we're hearing from the hyperscalers, we're hearing more about them developing their own chips, their proprietary chips. So I start to broaden out my scope in the semi space and start to think about some of the companies like Broadcom, companies like Marvell that are doing custom made chips, that I think that those names could kind of get a nice run here coming in the over the next couple quarters. So for me, I don't think that the tech trade is disrupted terribly. I just think that CES was a little bit of a downer.
If I could on NVIDIA, I said the other day that I believe that the keynote address would lead to a new all-time high. Check the box. Got the new all-time high. That's not me patting myself on the back. No, because guess what?
Well, history,
no follow-through.
History. Well, see that's.
You're right.
I was
all right. So last year, goes to CES. He, gives his keynote, and the stock goes up, and in the subsequent 2 days, it goes up more, and it stays up. So it was sort of telegraphed that the stock was going to go up. It did into the event. But it didn't stay there.
Didn't stay there. You didn't get the follow through. And let's kind of walk through that and explain how I think the viewers need to manage or shape the risk surrounding yesterday's move. It's very rare to see a stock trade to an all-time intraday high and then close challenging the 50-day moving average. You can't ignore that. That has significance. I think that there also is an element that you have to acknowledge that NVIDIA, despite all its strong fundamentals, the stock has been gamified. When you have all these ETFs that are double levered and you have exposure of algorithms participating, I think a lot of that contributed to what you saw yesterday. So if you're a buyer up at 150, or if you're a buyer up near those intraday highs, you have to take a look at where price is today and understand the momentum in the near term is down. And I know that's not something that is normally said, because most people say, okay, and Jim Cramer is right. Own NVIDIA as a core holding. Don't trade around it. But there are a lot of people that are trading around NVIDIA. There's a lot of tactical elements surrounding NVIDIA. And let's just acknowledge that what I expected to happen did not happen. And now the momentum is rolled over. You've got negative momentum in the near term. It doesn't wash away the long-term strong fundamentals of this company and the belief that you want to own it for the long term. And it will make a new all-time high at some point in the future.
Hey, how about
You know, for years, the CES was like the place you had to be every year. Then for me, it just kind of faded away. But this year, it's the Super Bowl, the World Cup, the World Series, all tied into one. So you need someone who really understands what's going on. Lucky enough, we've got that person. I want to bring in IO Fund, their lead tech analyst, Beth Kendig. Beth, I know you had to be in heaven this week. We've got to start with Jensen Huang, right? Because, listen, he was the center of the universe. He's moving markets. And, you know, listening to his presentation, and listen, I'm sort of a layman when it comes to this, so a lot of it I'm trying to still understand. But it felt like a blitz. Like he's going after everything, and the company wants to dominate everything, and yet the stock opened a little higher yesterday and then was hammered. What's going on?
Hi, Charles. Great to see you. I love buy the dip moments in NVIDIA. I live for those buy the dip moments. There were certainly some monumental announcements coming out of CES. I would point toward the personal AI supercomputer that they announced. To put it into perspective, for about $3,000, they are going to be able to handle AI models of up to 200 billion parameters. On the market today, Qualcomm's $1,000 AI PC can handle a 13 billion parameter. We're talking models that are 15 times larger. This is monumental because many investors have expressed concerns about big tech companies not showing enough revenue, not having those big flashy applications that are pulling in all the revenue. This facilitates that because not only can developers support AI from the developer side, but consumers will be able to use more AI applications. So that was a monumental announcement coming from this week.
What about the robot stuff? I'm really pumped about the robot stuff.
I think the words NVIDIA and robots should be said more together, because I have always had the contention when it comes to autonomous vehicles, NVIDIA, the leading robotics and simulation company, would have the lead here over a company like Tesla. And that was, a big debate many years ago, Tesla. All investors should be sitting up in their seats right now and see that NVIDIA not only is the common denominator with AI data centers, they will be the common denominator with autonomous vehicles.
Another interesting thing and exciting thing was Microsoft saying they're going to spend $80 billion. You just talked about what Wall Street has been griping about. One of the big gripes all of last year, and the reason all these experts on Wall Street said bail out of the winners and find a good, growth stock, a value stock, was that these Z-scalers couldn't keep it up. That news is absolutely phenomenal. Talk to us about demand for Blackwell and these other chips.
Oh boy, Charles, pay attention to those big tech CapEx numbers. They are communicating something very important, which is that demand remains as we go into 2025. Even more monumental, perhaps, from this last week was that Jensen Huang said Blackwell is going to be on time, that it's being qualified and in production at every cloud service provider. Those are music to every investor's ears. NVIDIA has led this market, this historic bull market, for 2 years. We want NVIDIA to be on time. They confirm they will be on time, and we're getting confirmation that Microsoft and many others are ready to spend. That sets up a great market for AI come 2025.
Beth, a lot of names moved on this. A lot of smaller names, I think, were introduced, during these presentations by Jensen. Aurora Innovations, for instance, is one of them. There's a feeling that these large names are going to eventually dominate and own everything in all these, budding spaces. But is there room as an investor for some of these smaller names to emerge and really get a piece of the action?
Yes, resounding yes. Especially when we look at NVIDIA. So now we have these big tech CapEx numbers. We know Blackwell is on time. What my firm is really looking very closely at is the AI networking stack. And that's because basically you have to realize that AI models are driving an exponential increase in compute requirements. And that means that it's reaching the limits of the existing network. The existing network, as you know it today, has to be overhauled. And we know exactly when it has to be overhauled. It's when Blackwell arrives. So there's many little component suppliers within the AI networking stack that we think will hit it out of the ballpark this year.
So as we move away and the hype phase of this kind of goes away, what's the, you've already, you should see all the notes I've written as you've been talking, by the way. What should we anticipate then next? I mean, are there distinctive now winners and losers from this? And I'll give you an example. AMD, there's always a hope that AMD will get it together. AMD has done extraordinarily well considering years ago they used, Intel used to eat their lunch regularly. The CEO is getting a lot of applause, but the stock has struggled, and I think it got a downgrade today. AMD, Taiwan Semi, are there distinct winners and losers right now?
Those are great questions. NVIDIA is going to be the leader in 2025, and it's because of what they're doing with their product roadmap. They're moving AI systems from 8 GPUs to 36 GPUs to 72 GPUs. These other players cannot keep up, whether that's custom silicon from Broadcom or whether that's AMD. However, keep in mind, Charles, that as this continues, the pricing power that NVIDIA has, almost gluttonous pricing power, will come under pressure, and that's when AMD's moment will occur. So give AMD that time. I would say 2026, 2027. I would not give up on AMD, but with that said, right here, right now, this is NVIDIA's market, and it continues to be.
And that's why I still think NVIDIA is pole position, because I have clear line of sight, because everyone's telling us everyone buying from NVIDIA, they're going to continue to dominate both revenue and sales.
Yeah, I was going to ask you your read on NVIDIA this week. The price action has been really interesting on CES. I mean, Jensen Huang speaks, the stock had already runs up a little after, then falls apart yesterday. And, it's down a fraction today, but it's still down more than 3% on the week.
Yeah, so I mean, I have half of my position that I had a while back. I have February 160 calls, so I really don't want that to get called away. But if you listen to what Jensen said, he's telling you the playbook of the names to own and the sectors to not own. And at the onset, you and Seema talked about the quantum computing names, but it's like Micron, that's going to be a winner. Robots. It's like there's multiple companies, but for me, I own Tesla, and so it's like NVIDIA is this company that's telling you what's happening within this AI space. And so I don't think it's long in the tooth with NVIDIA at all. I just think the markets are choppy around it. And also their earnings don't come out till the end of February. And so there's nothing to get super excited about. And so I think that 150 remains that ceiling. And I do think at some point this year, it's going to break out of that, because the revenue and earnings growth, I think, will just demand that and will pull the stock up like it has the past 2 years.
Well, breaking news out of Washington on chips, our Megan Casella has the details. Megan.
John, Bloomberg News is reporting that the Biden administration is considering or planning one additional round of export restrictions, specifically on the chips or the semiconductors used in artificial intelligence, specifically created by companies like NVIDIA, AMD, potentially an Intel, could be caught up in this as well. They say this round of restrictions is coming before Biden leaves office just over a week from now, saying that the U.S. wants to curb the sale of AI chips on both a country-by-country basis and a company-specific basis. This is part of Biden's push to limit the expanse of AI chips and getting them into the wrong hands, specifically China and Russia. In the fall, we did think that the Biden administration was considering this. At the time, it was reported to be focused on Middle Eastern countries. Now, Bloomberg News is reporting that this is going to be something of a tiered system, that U.S. allies will maintain access to AI chips, but adversaries would virtually be blocked, have almost no access to these AI chips. So we don't know yet specifically which companies, which countries will be named in these restrictions. They do say they could be released as soon as Friday. So more to watch there on the details. But for now, we know that companies like NVIDIA, AMD are likely to be caught up in this.
All right, meantime, we are watching shares of NVIDIA after hours following on a report that President Biden is looking to put further restrictions on exports of NVIDIA and AMD AI chips. NVIDIA just responding to the news saying every data center is being accelerated and every business and application is incorporating mainstream AI. A last-minute rule restricting exports to most of the world would be a major shift in policy that would not reduce the risk of misuse, but would threaten economic growth and U.S. leadership. Shares are now down nearly 10% since hitting a record high earlier in the session yesterday. We talked about this yesterday with Katie Stockton. It was a reversal, hit the high, closed on the low. It was like 200, 300% of the average daily volume, guys. So heavy volume on that day. Yeah. And what does that mean to you?
100%. I mean, I traded, I think, 375 million shares yesterday, so almost twice normal volume. You're right to point that out. Made an all-time high, closed on the lows. The same formation we saw in March, the same formation we saw in June. In March, the stock went down about 35% from March into middle of April. In June, it took a lot less time, and it was down into August, probably 40, 45% on that August 5th low. I think you're setting up exactly the same way. I'm not a hater, but history is repeating itself, and the amount of volume yesterday should really give people concern.
I'm not sure people were putting in their NVIDIA risk book that you were going to see export controls. It's just not. I mean, we know where they've been. We're not. I mean, we've already had out there the China dynamic with regards to chips. But if you look at a broader policy moment here for this stock, it's not what I think is in the price. I think what's been questioned about the price is the growth and the delta on the growth, which has been slowing but still really impressive, and that the multiple still makes it a lot more attractive than other big mega cap semis. And in that context, I like it. I think you got to sort through this.
Yeah, I just think one of the most important things for this name happened earlier this week. Jensen Huang at CES. He takes the stage Monday night. He's the keynote. Everybody wants a piece of what he's got to say, and it wasn't enough. You know, the stock was down 6.25% yesterday. The reversal today, while it closed flat. And this news tonight, I mean, I don't think it's particularly interesting. What I think is most interesting is not just the China ordering that we've seen and what these curbs might be. It also goes back to the concentration. You know, for those companies, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and Meta, you know, they make up 40% of their order book, of their revenues. And so if we're going to see a slowdown in just demand, that's why the CapEx numbers, when we get them on earnings over the next few weeks, is going to be really important. I just think there's probably other better places to play this theme than NVIDIA right now.
Please leave a like on this video so more people will see it. And while you're down there, please consider subscribing. It's free, and you can always change your mind. Thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.